Today we're going to be talking about perfectionism and specifically Chris's lifelong journey of living with and working through his perfectionism.
Do you have any like past with perfectionism or have those tendencies?
I think for me, it's more of and maybe this is perfectionism and I never thought of it like that, but it's like I feel like I will use a perfect example, Instagram, right?
Right,
So I feel like I need to learn more, read more, study more, take more
right,
courses, whatever,
right,
so that I understand what I'm doing better before I make the leap to do it.
right.
Is that perfectionism?
Yeah, that is kind of to a certain degree. I mean, I think you know, well, I guess to back up, with my story, I guess a bit more, and I can touch on that too because I feel you on that. I definitely do. I feel like perfectionism for myself because I battled with it for years, and a lot of that comes out of my childhood because my mother was a perfectionist, and her parents put a lot of pressure on her. And when she was raising me, it got passed down onto myself. And not to blame her, but it definitely seems to be one of those things that when a parent hasn't dealt with it, it's something that you can often see in the kids afterwards. And I've seen it with several of my clients, and that it kind of repeats that pattern. But for myself, perfectionism basically looks like exactly what you just said. Sometimes I will not start something because I'm like, okay, I need to be better at it before I start it, or know more about it or practice it, in private more before I start doing it out in the open. And that oftentimes will keep me from starting things,
Hmm.
that I know that I should have started a while ago, but it takes me a long time to get started because, well, I'm just so scared of failing. You
Right. And there's a phrase that I've heard in the past and I use from time to time, but I'm getting ready to get ready.
Yeah, getting ready to get ready. Yeah, absolutely,
Right? I mean, I'm
absolutely.
getting ready to do these things, but I'm not ready yet. I'm still getting ready to do
Yeah,
whatever
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
so that I don't fail or so that I don't make a mistake or so that, there's not something that I can't recover from, whatever that might be.
Right,
And the truth be known, right? I think some of the things that you're thinking of and where I'm thinking of, it's all part of life and it's all part of learning, right? Sometimes we
right,
have to stumble and pull ourselves back up to learn. And that's how
right,
we can learn. We just have to like step out into the unknown and make something happen. And I think sometimes when we do that, then we realize I shouldn't have been holding myself back because it's okay. We all
yeah,
make
absolutely.
mistakes. We
It
all do things.
and that's easy. I think that it's easy to say that as people, but it's really hard in practice. Like
Hmm. Especially since you said, since childhood, right? This is how you were brought up essentially. And
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's still something like that I have to work on, often. And recently, I've been, researching a lot more just because I can still see, I'm 44 years old now, and I can still see where these tendencies still weigh on me significantly. So um, even today, I found myself finishing up a project and for a client, and oftentimes I will finish it up, and where I finish it at, most people will be like, "Oh my gosh, it looks amazing! It's incredible." But I'm like, okay, I can do like this thing, I can do this thing. But now there's this guy that I started listening to, and we can put the link, to his YouTube in our description. But I really like he has what he calls the 70% rule, and it's very similar to mine. I always just say 80% rule. you know.
Mm-hmm.
And but I started like getting back into, I watched a podcast by him the other day and he was talking about the 70% rule, you know, and again, mine's the 80% rule, but basically like the in my case, the 80% rule is if I did something to what I consider it to be 80%, then I have to like stop and move on, you know, because it's more for me than it is a lot of times even for my clients, because I know like the difference between me pushing from 80% to say even 90% is going to take a significant amount more time. And that's going to reduce my reach by a lot, you know, it'd be less clients that I can coach, you know, less people I can take care of on the social media side of things. So the difference between that extra 10% of perfection is, from what I've gathered, is about 2 times. So up to 80%, I can spend an hour on something. Up to 90%, I will spend 2 hours on something. And say, you know, that next 5%, it's like, of course, we have this law that we talk about a lot of times, like within like the research community, which is the law of diminishing returns, right? So um, oftentimes, the harder we push something and the more we try to perfect something, the amount of time and the amount of work it takes to make those little extra gains is significant. I've
And
seen
in
that play
another
out in my
way,
life.
yeah, and another way to think of it, ROI popped into my head when you said that, right? What's our return on our investment? What's the
Yeah,
return of our investment of
return
our
on
time
investment.
and energy on whatever it is that we're working on?
Yes, absolutely. I think ROI is like a great, you know, way from my financial background, like to, you know, talk about that return on investment. You know, what is your return on your investment? Your time, you know.
Yep,
And yeah, I
yep.
agree. I like that. That's cool.
What's your time worth? How much is your time worth?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
sometimes it's not even necessarily monetary, right? In
right.
some ways, it could be our health and mental well-being,
Yeah,
right? You know,
absolutely.
doing some of these things, if we're spending all of this time and energy in one area, we're taking away from time and energy we could be putting into a different area, aka getting your walk in, doing your
Right.
strength training, eating well, you know,
Yes,
all of
absolutely.
all of those types of things. Or maybe it's even spending time with family and loved ones or friends or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. I heard in that same podcast like that I was listening to the other day too, like I heard him he mentioned a quote that I'd heard often, you know, in the past, where perfectionism is, I really like this. I've liked it for years, but when I heard him say it again, I was like, oh, I remember that. That's great. And I just felt like I really wanted to like, you know, bring that up again here. And was this person's definition of perfectionism. And I'll try to find who actually was the original person that said this, but basically they said something in the context of perfectionism is the belief that if we do the right thing, we act the right way, we look the right way, that we can avoid things like shame and guilt and pain. But it's the thing that's actually like keeping us from flying or something to that regard.
Hmm.
And I've always like loved that quote because it's the truth. Like, why did I, why for all of these years, even after like my mother like has left this world, like why for all of these years after her do I still like chase this idea of perfection, especially when other people are involved? And it's because deep down, consciously, I know it's not true. Like, consciously, I know that sometimes you're going to run into other perfectionists and they're going to have like this unrealistic expectation for your work, you know. But most oftentimes, that's not the case. But, you know, like deep down, I feel like, you know, if I am better, if I do the right thing, if I do things perfectly, if I look a certain way, that everyone's going to like me. Everyone's going to like the work that I do. And then I'm never going to have to feel bad. I'm always going to feel like a winner. And oftentimes that just keeps me from, like we talked about, getting the things done that people actually expect of me.
So do you think there's some sort of a kindred spirit in regards to your mom when you think about this perfectionism thing, that it keeps you connected to her in a certain way?
Not really,
No?
like,
Okay.
no, not so much. I think for myself personally, like, and I think this oftentimes is the case with kids. I don't think it's actually the pressure of the parent on the child that actually triggers perfectionism. Myself personally, from watching, like clients and children in general, um, it's the observation of the child on how the parent interacts with themselves and the standard. For example, like I can remember even to this age, my mother telling me it was okay, like on certain things, to mess up. But those same things, I would see my mother get to the point where she would hit herself, like, and talk poorly to herself over like these same failures. And so what it's kind of that that saying where it's like, well, like, you know, don't do what I or do what I say, not what I do, type of a thing, or however that
Yeah.
goes,
Yeah.
But
Yes. Yes.
for kids, like they're paying 100% attention and trying to model, the adult figures, the people in
Absolutely.
society that they
They're
want to
little
do.
sponges, right? They're
Absolutely.
absorbing everything that they see that is within their eye range. And of course with their parents, they definitely, they love their parents, and if mom and dad are doing or saying or acting a certain way, then they typically will, try to emulate that. And then yeah,
Absolutely.
and then as we go,
Oh, sorry. Right.
it's all good. As we grow up, right, then we carry those tendencies with us. And not just perfectionism. I mean, there's a million different tendencies that we and traits and characteristics that we get from our parents, through our lives, growing up and becoming young adults and then into adulthood. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
I guess the thing about this is, I mean, if there's people listening and watching to this that are dealing with perfectionism, I mean, I would say, well, if we work on it, there's hope. Like there's,
Well, better yet, how are you managing?
I think one of the best tools for myself personally that I've implemented, or is the 80% rule, for myself, because it enforces a more realistic like viewpoint. And so if I'm successful on 80%, it takes me far less time, and I keep repeating this. Eventually, like when I say, oh, to myself, oh, I really want to do this, or I really should do this, I can confidently come back to myself and say, like, no, it's enough. It's time to move forward. But it's repeating that process over and over again, so that each and every time you see that this other standard is actually enough. You're creating a new standard, and experience is the only real teacher in that regard. Experience over and over again. My number two is learning to parent yourself in a way that you would talk to somebody else if they were in a similar circumstance, and we talk so harshly to ourselves. A lot of the times when I find myself being too harsh with myself, I'm like, okay, how would I talk to someone else that was doing this, and or it made these mistakes? It's just being like, okay, well, what did you learn? Like, that's the only thing that I'm not okay with myself walking away from a failure from nowadays. It's like, yes, you can fail, right? Like I just literally did a couple of days ago with a client, and I walked away from it, the day of, and I was like, okay, well, I'm a little bit upset right now, and I was taking on too much of the burden myself. Truthfully, like it wasn't my error, like in the relationship. My only error in the relationship was speaking up too slowly for my worth in the relationship. And so what happened is I let something drag on that I shouldn't. Now I ended it, but I was still like caught myself, being upset with myself. But then I was like, okay, I learned something from this. Okay, that I need to, you know, be quicker to stand up for my worth, not allow people to take advantage of me. And so once I was like, okay, well, you learned something great. So it wasn't a failure after all. You learned something. So next time, you can be successful, but stop beating yourself up for what happened. It's life. With my nieces and nephews, I'm always like, okay, what did you learn? Like you lost the game. Well, what did you learn? What's your takeaway from it? How are you going to grow? What do you need to practice? So I think those are my big two, like the first one, the 80% rule, and enforcing it, being courageous enough that when you finish something to just be like, okay, that's enough and walk away. And the second one is learning to parent yourself, be kind and gracious to yourself, and ask yourself, well, how would you, if you were speaking to a child, how would you engage with this person in this failure? Because
What
so
can you
long
do
as you do
different
that,
next time?
exactly, exactly, but not dwelling on the failure, like dwelling on what can be taken from it, what can be learned from it, and implementation. Any thoughts on that, Tammy?
Well, I think so when you're in it, right? You're in whatever. Are
Mm-hmm.
you able to recognize that you're in a perfectionist job or environment? And do you recognize that quick enough that you can remind yourself of your 80% rule?
So
Or does it
I'm
sometimes lag on for a day or two and then you're like, oh, that's right, 80%. Stick to my 80% and it'll be okay.
right. So it depends on the area, and I think this is true with everyone. Like we have areas that things are a little bit more sensitive to us than others. Um, so, I mean, generally, like in regards to my work, I'm quick to be able to, okay, this is 80%, move on. Like for example, photography is easier for me to 80% than coaching. And so coaching, I need to be better about, okay, this is 80%, Chris, like move on, like you said what you said, move on. Like you can do only so much. Romantic relationships was a big one for me back in the day. And thankfully, like, like I learned my lesson there, like I think a lot of us have this mindset with relationships in general. Again, a perfectionist mindset, but if we're only a better person, if we only do these things, these certain people will like us. And that's just not true. Some people aren't going to like you regardless. Some people won't like you just because you're trying to be nice to them. It's like, so people can be, but I think it really varies from person to person, on topic to topic. I know for myself, certain areas like like I would say romantic relationships used to be a issue back in the day. Friendships were an issue back in the day. I still have to watch myself sometimes with friendships, but making sure that I'm not going over boards, and things. Teaching, also same thing. I think that's same with coaching. Like recognizing when enough is enough and you've done what you can do and you have to move forward. And again,
Yes,
like,
because we can't do those things for other people, right?
absolutely correct.
Whatever those things may be,
Correct.
or all the things, but other people have to step up to the plate and hit the ball too, you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yep. But I like that question. I think that's really good because yeah, not for every one person, like certain areas will be harder to remember than others. And some areas will really take work, whereas other areas might be rather simple for the person to walk
Hmm.
away from
Hmm.
perfectionist behaviors.
Yeah. And being able to recognize that that's what your struggle, for lack of a different word, is.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Hence the question, are you able to recognize, right? And I think,
Yes.
I just think that's a valid point for anyone who is stuck in a spot with something.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
are we able, it's putting a word to the feeling, right? Because our feelings are valid, but how can we describe it? Right?
Yeah.
Why are you smiling at me, right? Because we have to
Yeah.
be able to describe the feeling or the sensation, you
Right.
know, and if we can't identify it for ourselves and what that feels
Mhm.
like or looks like, or put a word to it so that you can work through it,
Yeah.
then it's just difficult to work through it.
I think that like brings us back to one of our favorite topics, journaling. Because journaling is such a helpful tool in regards to this. And I would be amiss if I didn't say that didn't play a part in in these things, because I can go through my day and be like, what things did I not put down when I was supposed to be 80%?
Hmm.
You know, what what areas and why did I beat myself up longer and didn't recognize these things before? Um, did I actually want to? Was I just wanting to be angry? What was my, like, what was the underlying feeling there?
Right.
Being able to take time and sort through those emotions, and just be aware of it, and coming back to that awareness through journaling, I think is can be very huge.
Well,
So
and it's also, I can speak for myself, that it's very beneficial, right? We get whatever is in our head that we are ruminating over and is on constant replay over and over out of our brain and onto paper or the computer or whatever it is, so that we can free up our mind for more positive things that we want to occur in our life. And
absolutely.
if our brains are jumbled with all of the ick, whatever that might look like for us,
Right.
it's very difficult to let the new fresh in, because
Yeah,
there's no
absolutely.
room for it. It was interesting when you mentioned this perfectionism, and then in conversations with other people, the words came up, not out of my mouth, but others. And I'm like, oh, it's exactly what Chris and I are going to talk about on our next podcast. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
yep.
All
I
right,
just
ma'am.
I just pull up whatever comes to me from wherever the funnel falls from. I just go with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So I guess to sign off then for everyone. So the big ones are big takeaways are, I guess, the and tips are the 80% rule, or whatever percentage is helps you go from a place like where you're not doing something to where you're actually moving and getting things done. So it's not like causing you to stay put. And the second big one is what was it? Oh, the second. My brain's not working today. Right now, Chris is currently on a diet. This will be a fun episode.
You're like, what was that again that I said,
Yeah,
80% rule?
exactly. What
I'm
is
not
it?
doing very good on my 100% right now.
Yeah, so the big, okay, the first one, 80% rule, right? Okay, we covered that. But the second one is parenting yourself. And with that, it's how would you talk to, say, like someone else if they made the same mistake that you did, or put out the same work, or whatever it is, or
Right.
child, like how would you talk to them? And I think that's the big number two on that one. But
Yeah.
since we didn't really, but we kind of talked about it, and I think it's significant because it is a huge underlying factor with all of this, is mindfulness and journaling. Where are you keeping track of these things? As Tammy kind of, and we coined, is don't use your brain for storing problems. Use it for
Use your
solving
brain for
problems.
solving problems.
Thanks for joining us, guys. I hope you found this one entertaining. And we were really pushing the 80% rule hard here. But if you liked what we had to say or liked what we shared today, like, share, subscribe to our channel. It helps us out, helps us give back to you all. But my name is Coach Chris.
And I'm Tammy Tomlinson.
Catch you guys next time.
Be well.